Part 4. We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Hui-Xiang. Chapter 33. After returning home, Kinya Kazuma looked at the quiet room and suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. He was used to hiding and seeking in Ishiharina's house, and it would be a little uncomfortable to be a human again. He first looked at his phone. It was too early, Ishiharina probably hadn't gotten up yet, but he still clicked on adding friends. Do other things first. He looked at the tablet he had just brought back, with a thoughtful expression on his face. Faishi Entertainment Co., Limited, the parent company of Kyunyulu, Love is War 2077, is more like a small studio than a company at this time. Kyunyulu is their trump card. Once this game fails to take off, what awaits them is the disintegration of the studio. This is already a norm in the industry. Every year, an unknown number of small-scale game producers join the industry with enthusiasm, and then announce the dissolution of the studio with a lot of debt. Kyunyulu is one of the lucky ones. It won the bet. It's a bit troublesome. If we follow the background of Kyunyulu, Love is War 2077, then Faishi Entertainment should continue to grow and still have a huge reputation in the future when adjusters are prevalent. See Chapter 1 for details. Asaba Kazuma has basically confirmed that the simulated timeline represents a possibility in the future. This possibility inherently represents a degree of foresight. This is also the reason why he contacted Ishiharina. If she is the same in reality, even if he puts his career first in reality, it will not delay him from saving her. There is no conflict between me not wanting to have a real relationship and saving her. If possible, Asaba Kazuma would like to try to become the boss behind the studio. However, it seems unlikely based on the current situation. Faishi Entertainment is not short of money now, but it is short of other things. It is unrealistic to want to play the acquisition game. Gotta take it slow. The most important thing now is how to make the biggest pot of gold. Although this world is generally the same as the previous world, the details are far different. It is very risky to use the memories of past lives to play divination. However, some things are verified in the simulator. Asaba Kazuma turned on the computer and connected the tablet. When he held the brush, an extremely familiar sense of smoothness flooded into his heart. He knew that this was Ishiharina's talents and skills starting to take effect. With just a few strokes, a draft of a male succubus looking back at the Prime Minister appeared on PS. He started to draw quickly, as if he knew where to start from the beginning. After several drawings, he successfully sketched the appearance of a young man. This is the protagonist in his novel The Reincarnated Succubus. Half an hour later, he stopped writing, looked at the manuscript paper, slightly adjusted the details, and completed the illustration. He rested for a while, sipped his tea, and then picked up the keyboard again. This time, he wanted to directly reproduce the specific content of the reincarnation of the succubus in his mind. Touch typing is already fast, not to mention that he only needs to copy the content in his head. 3 hours later, a volume of 80,000 words of text was successfully produced. Asaba Kazuma glanced at the keyboard and felt that at this rate, the keyboard might not be able to withstand a few rounds of abuse and would be scrapped. I just didn't expect that the effect of improving physical fitness and adjustment of genes and strengthening of nerve reflexes would be so significant. 3 hours, 80,000 words. And it's the kind that guarantees quality and quantity. If you let go of the past life, the eagle will cry when he sees it. It just kind of ruins the fingers. The keyboard is about to emit smoke when coding with this intensity. After submitting the novel directly to Tamura Yuzuki's mailbox, he finally lay lazily on the bed. The next step is to wait for the seniors to dig out my new book. After closing his eyes for a while, he quickly opened them again. There is still homework to do today. Hayakawa Haruna is indeed a qualified or even excellent teacher, and all the learning content assigned directly targets his weaknesses. It was a bit difficult to do it at first, but as he gradually got used to it, his frown soon became more comfortable. Intelligence add 1 is somewhat effective, and it feels quite refreshing to be filled with knowledge. He finally understood why some students were addicted to studying. When everything settled, he raised his head and looked at the time on the computer. It was already past 8 o'clock at this time. Counting the time, Ishihara should also get up. He opened Twitter and found that his friend in the background had passed through at some point. He decisively sent a record. "Catch a night owl, Rina-san, why are you secretly using Twitter behind my back?" Location, Ishihara's house. Ishihara sat on the chair, doing nothing but looking at the phone quietly. She agreed to the application early, but after waiting for a long time, she didn't see the person reply. She couldn't help but wonder, is it really just a dream? The more she waited, the more she suffered, and the more she waited, the more disappointed she became. Suddenly, a message popped up in the background: "Capture a night owl, Sister Rina, why are you secretly using Twitter behind my back?" A rippling smile appeared on her face. She typed a sentence and then deleted it. Then hit again. Delete again. After dawdling for a long time, she felt as if she was still dreaming, trembling so much that she couldn't utter a word. Damn it, Ishihara, why are you so useless? Didn't you reply to him directly in the dream? She almost wanted to tell him her home address directly. But after thinking about it, timidity came back to me. It's precisely because I know that I can't say it out loud. That is the groom of my dreams. When Asaba Kazuma takes a break from his busy schedule, he always checks his cell phone. I just don't know why, even though I have been approved as a friend, Rina Ishihara never replies. Is there something wrong with the simulation? Jian Yufengjian was a little worried. Could it be that something happened to her? He was a little irritated. Looking at the messages sent by unknown people in the background, he started to click on them one by one. The number of private chat messages hanging above looked too annoying, and he, who had a slight obsessive-compulsive disorder, couldn't stand it. Clicking and clicking, he suddenly saw an account named Lily Doesn't Want to Write a Book, and the account responded like this. Dark Tyrannosaurus Warrior, do you know how to submit a light novel? Asaba Kazuma? Don't tell me this is Lily Garcia. After thinking for a moment, he replied, send directly to the editor's email address, especially from Denjiki Bunko's Tamura Editor Co., Ltd. Before he could say more, his cell phone rang. I glanced at the screen and saw a phone number I hadn't seen before. After the connection, a deep voice spoke, hello, I am the editor of Denjiki Bunko, Yuzuki Tamura. Are you Mr. Asaba? Yes, editor Tamura called me this late at night. Are you still reviewing the manuscript at night? Asaba Kazuma said with a smile. He didn't expect that the senior would react so quickly. It's late at night and I'm still reviewing the manuscript. It seemed that he was on the right track when it came to taking the bait. We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Hui-Xiang. Chapter 34. On the other end of the phone, Tamura Yuzuki's voice was clear. Teacher Kinyu, I took a quick look and found that the new book you submitted to the mailbox is very in line with the requirements of our Denjiki Bunko. If you don't mind, I wonder if you can come to Denjiki Bunko tomorrow morning to sign the licensing contract. If you are in the following cities or counties, I will send you an electronic version of the contract. After you sign it, just mail it directly to our Denjiki library. I'll go to Denjiki Bunko in the afternoon. I'm in Tokyo now. That would be great. By the way, I have one thing to ask you. Did you draw the illustration at the beginning of the reincarnation of Succubus yourself? Yes. You are an illustrator whose level is far beyond the ordinary. If I don't delay your coding and you are responsible for the illustrations of your own novels, You may have unexpected surprises, Tamura Yuzuki said seriously. Kinya Kazuma nodded subconsciously. That's why he went straight to illustration first. Get the head start. Even if you are a recent graduate, you all know how to prepare a good-looking resume for yourself. How could he, who is just starting out, not know how to instantly attract attention among thousands of flowers? Of course there is no problem. I trust the aesthetics of Dengeki Bunko editors. Tamura Yuzuki was silent for a moment, his voice seemed to be 3 points lower, and he said. Teacher Kinyu, you should be well known in the illustrator world, right? With all due respect, given your level of illustration, we may not be able to give you a satisfactory price. The editor-in-chief and other illustrators will also have objections. Kinya Kazuma snorted softly. Come on, this is the answer he wants. He said calmly, it doesn't matter. Just pay the price you can give me. Just think that I am paying for my dream. I still have a little confidence in this book. Editor Tamura breathed a sigh of relief. Based on his intuition from many years of work, this book, combined with the specially customized illustrations, may become a hit. But as he said, Dengeki Bunko cannot afford such a high price. He said in a gentle voice. I don't know how long it will take you, Mr. Kinyu, to draw such an illustration. Will it delay your time in writing a novel? Of course not, Kinya Kazuma said flatly, it only takes half an hour to draw an illustration of this level, which is not as long as the time it takes me to type. Half an hour. Location, Dengeki Bunko Editorial Department. Tamura Yuzuki put down the phone, took a screenshot of Asaba Kazuma's illustration, and sent it to a colleague on the side. Wow, what an amazing painting. Another editor who was still working overtime poked his head out of his desk and shouted to Tamura, Tamura, which teacher's masterpiece is this? I'm going to see if there are any pornographic pictures. He looked at Yuzuki Tamura sitting at his workstation thoughtfully, so he said, what's wrong, Tamura, you look like you're scared. This painting was painted for his own work by an author who just submitted a manuscript to me. So awesome. What great teacher wants to go ashore and actually chooses to do it himself and paint such a painting? It must be very hard. I don't know who it is, it should be an old author who has been writing light novels trying to restart it. The writing style is quite experienced, not like a newcomer. But I was a little concerned about what he just said. He said it would take him half an hour to paint such a painting. The editor was stunned, waved his hand, and said with a smile, don't be joking, Tamura, you can't believe this. We also have to deal with that group of illustrators. Others don't know it, but you and I don't know it either. For illustrations, it does not take much time to draw an exquisite character, but it is not an easy task to ensure that the character is exquisite, the colors are rich and eye-catching, and the movements are beautiful and eye-catching. Yes, Yuzuki Tamura was secretly shocked. Some people have been drawing for several years, and the illustrations they draw will give people a dirty feeling. More than that, look at the use of colors, it's amazing. Look at the background, it's elegant, it's so elegant. Is this something that can be done in half an hour? Tamura Yuzuki pondered, this is really hard to say. Teacher Kinyu's words just now were too calm and too natural. He asked cautiously, Nipori, what if he really did it in half an hour? Editor Nipori turned his head in surprise, thought seriously for a moment, sighed and said. Painting requires skills, but some people are born with such abilities for them, areas that take ordinary people half a lifetime to touch may be their starting point. Every illustration of this level is a pleasure. If it is as you say, that teacher Chien you can really do it. It should be awesome. Editor Nipori shook his head and said, no, it's not very powerful, it's a god. But. He raised his head and said calmly, there can be no god in this world. The words are divided into two parts. On the other side, while Asaba Kazuma was reading a book, He picked up his mobile phone from time to time. After a while, I put down my phone and started reading again. But soon, feeling a little irritable, he put down the book again, got up, and came to the computer. Forget it, just know how to draw. Ishihara has not sent any messages for a long time, which makes him unable to calm down. He is also planning to submit the magically modified version of The Prince of Tennis to be serialized in the weekly Shonen Jump. However, compared to illustrations, which require more detailed painters, comics can be drawn much faster. While he was drawing, he suddenly noticed that his phone was lighting up. As soon as he pressed the digital pen in his hand, a scratch appeared on the PS drawing. Putting down the digital pen, he picked up his phone, and then he saw the Twitter backstage. Ishihara replied. "Hey, did you admit the wrong person?" Chien Kazuma smiled and subconsciously said, "We meet again, sister." But I felt that speaking like this might scare some timid fool, so I deleted the sentence and followed the reference answers in the love simulation and sent the sentence. "Hey, Rina-san, aren't you in Kumamoto Prefecture? I'm Asaba Kazuma, don't you remember me?" What Asaba Kazuma didn't know was that on the other side, Ishihara cute eyes had widened when she saw the message he sent. In the dim room, the light of the mobile phone shone on her face. Before she could react, a photo was sent directly. "It's me. I saw you posted the Tokyo Sky Tree, Rina-san. Are you coming to Tokyo from Kumamoto Prefecture? Why don't you come to play with me?" Asahi Kazuma's words jumped out immediately. Rina Ishihara looked at the photo blankly. The boy in the photo has an indescribable look in his eyes, and his smile is gentle and bright. Ishihara's heart accelerated unexpectedly. An uncontrollable blush crept up from her collarbone to her face. She hugged the pillow tightly, with confusion and unconcealable joy in her eyes. Big liar. She curled up and tapped her fingertips on the screen, as if she wanted to touch the boy's face. It turned out that it was really not a dream, this was her knight, her groom. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Huasiang. Chapter 35. It was already late at night when we ended the chat. Ishihara stood up slowly, with a brighter look on her face. Not a dream, but a tangible reality. That's great. She grunted. Suddenly remembering something, Ishihara stood up and walked to the computer. Since everything in the dream is real, then I should have some talent in painting, right? A subtle look flashed across the girl's face. She remembered that in the dream, Kinya Kazuma once mentioned to her that he came to her door on purpose. Now that I think about it more, my heart feels hot. This feeling, which she had never experienced before, was quite subtle and difficult to describe to others. However, she did buy a digital tablet at home some time ago out of curiosity, and started practicing on her own. When she woke up from the dream before, she didn't take the dream seriously, let alone try it. Now that she had taken the first step through chatting with Asaba Kazuma, she had some more ideas in her mind. How about giving it a try? Ishihara picked up the digital pen and started tracing on the digital tablet. Strangely enough, she is not yet familiar with the related operations of PS painting, but when the brush falls on the digital tablet, it is as if it is a matter of course, and she understands how these things should be operated. Her eyes gradually became hollow, but the movements of her hands did not stop at all. Soon, a handsome young face appeared on the paper. Although there was no reference, she directly sketched the appearance of Asaba Kazuma. As she was drawing, she had an idea and started to want to draw something exciting. Ah, what does he look like under his clothes? Ishihara was just about to start writing, but suddenly found that she could not remember the appearance of his body in the dream. She suddenly came back to her senses, feeling ashamed. Why does she feel that she has learned badly? It must be that big liar who taught her bad things in her dream. She pouted. If he hadn't liked playing Geo every day in her dream, she wouldn't have thought of bare feet, his body, the big bed at home, and a clean body as soon as she saw his ankles. Unfortunately, the feedback from this precognitive dream was not clear enough. After thinking for a moment, Ishihara Rina opened the shopping website. After searching for a while, I found a pretty good foot care cream and checked the price. So expensive. But he likes it very much. After hesitating for a moment, Rina Ishihara chose to buy it. Although I still have a lot of money on hand, my budget seems to be a bit overrun. Rina Ishihara thought for a moment. How about trying to see if you can get some painting orders from the internet? The words are divided into two parts. After Asaba Kazuma finished handling the first conversation with Rina Ishihara, he breathed a sigh of relief. When I picked up the digital pen again, the speed was a little faster. The comics of Shonen Jump are generally in black and white. Unless they are a special issue or a single volume, they rarely appear in color. After all, once coloring is added, the work pressure of the cartoonist will start to skyrocket. Especially in those days when there were no digital tablets, the pressure of painting could be said to suffocate the artist. But for him, who already has the memory of the Prince of Tennis in his mind, it's really not a big problem. He was faster than when he was drawing illustrations. After all, he was copying now, not creating. Even more, due to the talents and skills of Ishihara Rina again, the quality of the comics he writes is higher. Just like Reincarnated Succubus, after several simulations, it has changed from gold-plated toilet paper to a qualified or even excellent cool novel. Now, the comics of Prince of Tennis have once again undergone transformation under his hands. By the time he stopped, it was already 11 o'clock. He sorted out the manuscript, with a smile on his face. In this way, his preliminary preparations were almost completed. Asahi Kazuma opened her phone and stared at a news message. The animation studio had a bad start, the original paintings suffered large-scale poaching, and the debt crisis worsened. Qian Yufengma nodded. Sure enough, it was similar to what had happened in the simulation. In the previous simulation, Animation Studio also encountered a debt crisis, but Animation Studio chose to bet on its own reincarnation succubus and completed a miraculous comeback at the most dangerous time. It is precisely because of this comeback that Gong Gong breathed a sigh of relief, and he in the simulator had the opportunity to promote the animation of Kimura Fairy's light novel. Because Animation Studio has a high degree of trust in him. It's finally here. I only participated in the simulation, but I didn't get any actual benefits. The potential for construction is not small. In the future, I can take off with the help of Fairy Kimura's book. This time, let me take the lead. He stared at this piece of news. Being deeply involved in the production of Animation Studio was the first step in his career. If everything goes well, in reality, he will directly get the first pot of gold and achieve financial freedom with half a foot. He began to look forward to what interesting things would happen when he went to school tomorrow. As soon as he fell on the bed, he fell into a deep sleep. When I woke up again it was already the next day. After Asaba Kazuma finished class in the afternoon, he told Haruna Hayakawa that he had something to do today, and then went directly to the direction of the art department of Heikuin High School. He went there this time mainly because he wanted to verify two things. When I came to the art department, I saw some students painting inside, and there were even professional art teachers instructing them. Asaba Kazuma knew that teacher. Chihiro Ishijiro, who is in charge of art at Heikuin High School, is an art teacher with a good reputation. It is said that in the past few years, Chihiro Ishijiro has led a team to teach many gold and silver prize winners in the Tokyo Youth Painting Competition student group. He has good connections in the industry and can be said to be a powerful person. Classmate, why did you come to the art department? While he was thinking about how to integrate into the atmosphere of the art department, a voice suddenly came from behind him. He turned around and saw two students, a boy and a girl, standing behind him. Asahikazuma showed an apologetic expression on his face, stepped aside, and said softly, "Sorry, I'm just a little interested in painting, so I wanted to come and see what's going on in the art department." When the male student heard this, his eyes lit up, he patted him on the shoulder and said, "Those who like art must be good people. Come on, let me take you in and have a look. Our art department is quite fun." As he said this, he excitedly took Asahikazuma's hand and pulled him into the club. As soon as he entered, the boy shouted to the teacher Chihiro Ishijiro, who was sitting on the desk. "Teacher, I helped you kidnap a good-looking model. Asahikazuma, 6. Good guy, he originally wanted to get a feel for the art department, but why did he become a model like this? Osawa, put your hand down. You are also the director of the art department. What do you mean by yelling in front of your juniors?" Teacher Ishijiro snorted. He turned to look at Asahikazuma. "Forget it if you don't look at it." After looking at it, his eyes immediately lit up and he added, "Your aesthetics are indeed online, but I don't think this classmate has any intention of being a model for you." Asahikazuma nodded and said, "Sorry, I was just outside the door. I wanted to see the situation in the art department and was considering whether to join the club." Chihiro Ishijiro glanced at Asahikazuma and said in a low voice, "There are not many requirements for joining the art club. Have you gotten to know the art club before coming?" Asahikazuma nodded. The art department of Bian High School is not so much a club as it is a directed training art class. During students' normal class time, members of the art class will learn painting under the guidance of Chihiro Ishijiro, with the goal of sprinting to the Gosen School of Japan University of Art, Tokyo University of the Arts, Musashino Art University, Tama Art University. The students in the art class are highly overlapped with the members of the art department. With the permission of Chihiro Ishijiro, who was in charge of the art class, the venue of the art class was transformed after school and became the home court of the art club. Teacher Ishijiro, I came here this time because I heard that the Tokyo Youth Painting Competition will soon start submissions recently, and I would like to inquire about your submission needs. Chihiro Ishijiro was stunned for a moment and looked him up and down. Are you serious? Without a solid foundation in painting, your submission will be reduced to a foil. He was too embarrassed to say what was on his mind directly. Asahikazuma's student card is for a second-year student, which means it has been almost 2 years since he entered Heikuin High School. Nearly 2 years have not left any impression on him, who is in charge of art. He doubts whether the child's art skills are zero. We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love. Author, Fei Se Hui-Xiang. Chapter 36. Chihiro Ishijiro was speechless for a moment. If it weren't for the fact that the child looked better looking and had a nicer voice, he might have refused directly. It's not impossible to help you sign up and submit. After pondering for a moment, Ishijiro Chihiro decided not to dampen the child's enthusiasm, but proactively said, "When you came to school, did you bring your work with you?" "I didn't bring it. I used a digital tablet before. Otherwise, can I use the paints from my seniors?" There was a good-natured chuckle from within the art department. They didn't feel that Kinyakazuma offended them. After all, the junior student looked really relaxed and happy at first glance. So I just thought that he was deliberately trying to make them happy. Even the girl who just walked in with him waved her hand. Hi, use my paint, I just haven't started writing yet." Chihiro Ishijiro was speechless. Come on, it's exactly what he thought. He really has no basis in painting. There is a huge gap between drawing with a digital tablet and drawing directly in reality. It's just that he didn't know that Kinya Kazuma had the money to buy paints, so he could visit with his works, so why bother to paint on the spot? Asahi Kazuma did not refuse the girl's kindness, but just walked straight to the corner where she was. As he approached, the expression on the originally lively girl's face changed slightly. No, this little boy is too good looking. She subconsciously took a step back and gave way. Asaba Kazuma nodded towards her and said softly, "You must be senior sister Zioxi who won the silver medal in the youth painting competition last year. I have seen your photo on the honor column." Senior sister Zioxi was a little surprised and said blankly, "Even if you praise me like this, I won't be happy." "Then, let me borrow your paintbrush for now." "Don't worry, it won't waste too much time." "Don't touch my white paint with dirty pens." Senior sister Zioxi gave a friendly reminder. Kinya Kazuma turned to her and smiled, "Okay. It doesn't matter if you touch or touch," Senior sister Zioxi added. "Well, I hope I can perform better." He looked at the surrounding paint. "If it can satisfy you, Sister Zioxi, that would be even better." "It's not easy to satisfy me. I think I can do it." His voice was very calm, without any arrogance in his words, but his extremely calm tone gave people an unparalleled sense of confidence. It's as if it's natural that he can quickly gain the respect of others. Several students on the side looked at each other and spread their hands. This junior is so crazy. But they quite like this character. He is an art student. If he is not crazy, it would be boring. Of course, it's one thing to like Asaba Kazuma. Whether he thinks he can do it or not is another matter. This guy doesn't even hold his pen right. At this time, Kinya Kazuma's eyes were no longer on them. Zioxi Senpai used gouache. Usually, the watercolor used in the art examination is mostly water. Compared with watercolor, which is more transparent, gouache can create a thicker color atmosphere. Asahi Kazuma could spot the senior Kanishi at a glance and entered the entertainment time after class. Gouache painting is relatively fast, and the quantity is large and cheap. For some students from poor families, it can reduce the pressure and burden. Watercolor is more expensive, but when painting, you add water to the palette to dilute it, so it lasts longer. But she had seen the winning works of senior sister Kanishi at that time. It's an oil painting. Japanese professional painters mostly take the path of oil painting. In fact, the gouache paint comes from his own hometown next door. This is not a pigment with a long history, but a compromise made to meet the larger needs of painting in an era of scarcity. Although gouache works are difficult to preserve, the price is too cheap. For poor students, it is difficult to refuse, so much so that they have now traveled across the ocean to Japan. Kinya Kazuma didn't say much. After he saw Rina Ishihara's talent revealed by the simulator, a strange conjecture arose in his mind. He really didn't know much about the real life of traditional painters, and neither did Ishihara Rina, so he suspected that neither he nor Ishihara Rina had ever thought about this problem before. That is Ishihara Rina's painting talent really limited to illustrations and comics? Chihiro Ishijiro is considered an expert in the field of traditional painting, otherwise he would not have been specially invited by Heikuin High School to train art students. Although there is still a big gap compared to those famous people, but the vision is there. Thinking of this, he directly picked up Zioxi's paintbrush, placed the flower plate next to him, and dipped a little bit of each from the already mixed paint plate. After mixing the colors, he began to paint confidently. First, the grass-green background. He draws quickly, with relaxed and free movements, without any sloppiness. "Slow down, you may make mistakes if you draw too fast," senior sister Zioxi reminded in a low voice. "I can still control it." Zioxi Jingzi pouted. This junior didn't want to listen to the advice. "The color is very comfortable," she whispered while looking at Jianyu Kazuma's movements. The students on the side subconsciously looked in the direction of the two of them. Someone simply got up and walked over to them. Gradually, Zioxi Jing's expression became serious. Even someone like her, who is considered a painting veteran among students, is far from being as free and generous as he is when painting. When adjusting colors, in order to achieve a color she is satisfied with, she may need to repeat several movements, and she must be very careful when writing. Of course, she knew why. Everyone knows that when painting, it is often better to show the spirituality of the painting. But she could only be cautious, because Hui Shufang Qiu's painting required sufficient ability. She didn't think she had reached this level now. She really couldn't do this kind of confident painting method. What a beautiful use of color. A boy next to senior sister Zioxi said softly. Kinyo Kazuma ignored them and never stopped using the brush in his hand. Such a confident posture, coupled with the jaw-dropping performances of several students around him, unsurprisingly attracted Chihiro Ishijiro. He stood behind Asahi Kazuma. Sometimes he frowned, sometimes he was surprised, sometimes he was thoughtful. The expression on his face was that of a chameleon. During this period, there were also students who gathered around. When they saw Asaba Kazuma's movements, they subconsciously wanted to make a sound, but they were stopped by Chihiro Ishijiro's sword and sharp eyes. When Asaba Kazuma stopped writing, the scene unfolded of a girl wearing a wedding veil and holding flowers standing on a green lawn. "You kid, are you here to cause trouble?" Ishijiro Chiu opened his mouth to speak when he saw Asaba Kazuma put down the brush and obviously had no intention of continuing to slide. "Why do Ishijiro-sensei think so?" Asaba Kazuma said in surprise. "This can't be your first time painting gouache," Chihiro Ishijiro said calmly. "There is only one person in the studio who can reach your level." I can't do it." Zioxi Jingzi opened his mouth and said hesitantly, "He writes much more decisively than me." Asaba Kazuma was silent for a moment. "Sure enough, my sister Rina, your talent is obviously not just for drawing comics." He raised his head and said with a smile, "I have said that I used to use computers to draw, and the same is true for my friends who discussed painting techniques with me before." Chihiro Ishijiro was silent for a moment. After a long time, he took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, took out one and lit it, took a deep breath, and amid the smoke, he said in a deep voice. "Have you only ever played with digital tablet painting? Have you never really gotten into painting in real life? If you insist on including the Gongbai paintings in elementary school art classes, then it probably does. The internet is so magical." Chihiro Ishijiro walked to the corner and put out the cigarette butt, then turned and came to Asaba Kazuma. "You came to me this time, you must have something to ask for." Qian Yufengjian nodded and did not hide anything. "It is true that I want something. Come to the next classroom and let's talk." "Okay." Kinyo Kazuma showed a bright smile. "We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love?" Author, Fei Se Huixiang. Chapter 37. Location, an empty classroom next to the art department of Heikuin High School. Chihiro Ishijiro lit a cigarette again, puffed out a puff of smoke, looked quietly at the young man sitting opposite him, and said with a smile. "Tell me, if you want me to help you with anything, you can't ask for anything at all. Come to the art department to find me, an old man." "Teacher Ishijiro, you are joking. You are not old at all. The principal hopes that you will cultivate more high-end talents in the field of painters," Asaba Kazuma said obediently. "Just now in the classroom, there are two purposes for showing holiness to others. First, verify and see how exaggerated Ishihara Rina's talent is. Second, he wanted to borrow Mr. Ishijiro's connections." He said bluntly. "Teacher Ishijiro, I heard that editor Takano of Shonen Weekly Jump was once your student and he dared to beg you. I want to meet him and read my comics. Very urgent." "It's urgent. That's it, I can help you, but I have a condition in exchange." Chihiro Ishijiro folded a piece of paper on the table 3 times before putting the cigarette butt on the paper and extinguishing it. Are you interested in participating in the Tokyo Youth Painting Competition? Are you interested? Asabi Kazuma instantly knew what Chihiro Ishijuro meant, blinked, and said, "Of course, didn't I tell you before that I hope you can help me to participate in the Tokyo Youth Painting Competition," he added, "after all, you are my instructor." Chihiro Ishijuro nodded and said, "Have you brought the first draft?" "Keep it with you all the time." Kinya Kazuma opened his school bag and handed over a stack of drawings. He took it casually, flipped through it roughly, raised his head and asked, "Go out for a meal with me, and you will meet the person you want to meet." Qian Yufengjian's expression changed slightly, and in the end, thousands of words came together into a simple "I can't thank you enough." Location: around Hakuin High School sushi restaurant. He wants his comics to take off as quickly as possible, otherwise, even if he is willing to wait, animation studio will not wait until it is in debt crisis. If it is delayed for a long time, it will be much more difficult for him to plan the first pot of gold by starting construction. After all, in the simulator, the animation studio turned a corner and quickly made a lot of money. In this world without past life experience as a reference, it is not easy to find a business that is sure to make a profit without losing money, and the possibility of making a huge profit is extremely low. And he has the opportunity to intervene now. Animation studios currently lack excellent planners, senior original artists, and excellent supervisors. If he intervenes, he really has the opportunity to make a small fortune. There is no problem in making a pot of gold. If the plan goes well, even able. This was the reason why he came to see Chiyu Ishijuro. But I never expected that he would give face like this. After hesitating for a moment, he still asked in a low voice, "Teacher Ishijuro, calling someone out like this will waste your favor. Why do you want to help me to this extent?" "Maybe because of the possibility," Ishijuro said casually, "you have to know that the painter circle is also a world of personal relationships. Even professional painters who want to make better money will be influenced by the circle. According to you, depending on the circle, the income will be significantly different." Teacher Ishijuro spread his hands and said, 40,000 yen for a meal of sushi like this is just a small sum of money to me, but I'll sell you a favor first, and wait until one day you become famous and popular, maybe you can come over and hold my hand. That's what a teacher's job is. Of course, I don't just do this to you. I will also give a helping hand to some children who have the same possibility." Just as Mr. Ishijuro said this, he suddenly raised his head and pointed at the person who walked in slowly. "Take this guy for example. Teacher, I also have a name." A man with a middle-parted hair came in. "Takano-ken, editor of Weekly Shonen Jump, hello." He stretched out his hand towards Asahi Kazuma. "Kinya Kazuma, nice to meet you." Kinya Kazuma also extended his hand. Takano-ken looked at Asabi Kazuma with a little curiosity in his eyes, but he seemed quite friendly. "Is this the genius that you specially called me to recommend to me, teacher?" His voice was gentle, but Asahi Kazuma could feel that there was a bit of distrust in his eyes as he looked at him. "Sit down, Kinyu, and show him your original painting. This is a special gift from me." Asabi Kazuma nodded, took out the manuscript paper from his backpack, and handed it to editor Takano. Takano-ken was about to take it apart and look at it, but Chihiro Ishijuro hit him with chopsticks. "Eat first, otherwise you will be fascinated by it again later." Takano-ken didn't care either. He has been working at Shueisha for almost 6 years. He is no longer the ignorant newcomer he was back then. He still has 1 or 2 hit works under his belt. It can be said that in the extremely competitive editorial department, he can be regarded as an old man who has read quite a few comics by newcomers. If it weren't for the Pillar Destroyer blade in his hand that was already determined to be completed within half a year, he wouldn't have hurriedly put down his work and rushed here when he heard from his teacher that he had found a very powerful comic genius. But when he saw Chianyu Kazuma for the first time, he was a little disappointed. Too young, to be honest, Shueisha has not encountered young geniuses, such as Muscle Man co-created by 17-year-old Shimada Ryaji and 18-year-old Nakai Yoshinori, but those were all works from the last century. In the new era, many of the original convenient roads that rode the wind of the times have been almost taken by our predecessors. Recreating a popular cartoonist among high school students in the new century is much more difficult than it was in the previous century. Naturally, after seeing Asaba Kazuma, he looked down upon him a bit, but he still said politely, "It's okay. I can take a look at the sushi first. It doesn't matter if it's cold." How could Chihiro Ishijiro not hear the prejudice in the student's words? He just snorted coldly and said, "Okay, you watch first, Boykinyu, and we eat slowly." Takano-ken didn't take it seriously, but his eyes were still attracted by the cover drawn by Asaba Kazuma because it was so beautiful. It does seem to be a bit level. After Takano-ken opened a chapter, his original casual expression began to change slightly. Page after page, turn over carefully. The expression on his face became more and more serious. He never raised his head, but quietly turned over the drawings. "I made a mistake. Where did this little monster come from? Isn't it a ghost writer?" Suddenly he raised his head and looked at Kinyo Kazuma. His voice was so excited that he said hoarsely, "Are you going to submit an article for Weekly Shonen Jump?" Wait a minute, I don't want to eat sushi. Teacher, I need to contact the editor-in-chief." Takano-ken Ioki stood up in a hurry and hid outside the door. Jian Yufengjian could vaguely hear him yelling inside the door. "Team leader, aren't we going to have a series meeting soon? I have found a good prospect here, a real good prospect, with talent that can be seen at a glance. The most important thing is that he is not yet 18 years old. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Hui-siang. Chapter 38. When Asaba Kazuma was about to go home, Takano-ken followed him out of the restaurant. "Teacher, can you, please give me more advice in the future?" he said seriously. Kinyo Kazuma shook his head. "It's nothing, as long as it can be serialized smoothly, I will be relieved. This week's reader questionnaire has come out, and judging from the results, I'm afraid there will be room for 3 new works this time. Teacher, can you, the team leader has just communicated with me. As long as you can maintain this level, there will definitely be a place for you, teacher, among the 3 vacancies." Shueisha is a typical reader survey supremacist. The ranking of the questionnaire determines whether the comics can continue to be serialized. Editor Takano's meaning is obvious. Recently, some works have been declining continuously, and there is a high probability that they will be taken down. Asahi Kazuma nodded. "I'm sorry, Mr. Takano, please let me know when the news comes out, and I'll treat you to dinner." Takano-ken glanced at him. "Is this the confidence of a genius? It's not that I'll treat you to a meal after you pass, but I'll treat you to a meal when there's news." However, Takano-ken took it for granted. "Although I really want to stand up and say, how much effort we put into this work, we still have to convey it through comics. You have a talent far beyond ordinary people in this regard." After chatting for a few more words, the two parted ways. Location, Shueisha Weekly Shonen Jump Editorial Department. After the reader questionnaire was distributed, some people in the office are happy and some are sad. Takano-ken was also restless. The structure of their department, from top to bottom, consists of 1 editor-in-chief, 3 deputy editor-in-chiefs, 5 squad leaders, and 9 responsible editors under their command. Serialization meetings are meetings that only the editor, deputy editor, and squad leader can attend. Today's meeting was as intense as ever. The 4-hour meeting was often too long and the arguments were too intense. The middle and senior management of the editorial department even needed to put some snacks and make tea on the meeting table. Although Takano is confident enough in Asaba Kazuma's comics, he still feels worried every time he has a serialization meeting. Bang! The meeting door opened, and the team leader who led Takano came out and waved to his team members. Internal meeting. Takano-ken's heartbeat suddenly accelerated. After the serialization meeting, each team leader will communicate with the editors under his command individually about the situation of the serialization meeting. Whose authors want to be cut and whose authors want to be promoted will be informed at the small meeting. After everyone was seated, the team leader looked at the results on his hands and didn't speak for a long time. After a long time, the team leader suddenly raised his head and said, "Takano, congratulations, I have another serial work under my belt." Okay, Takano-ken became excited. But the team leader continued. Takano-ken's heart lifted again. Did something go wrong? The team leader shook his head and said one thing rather helplessly. Everyone is optimistic about teacher Kinyu's potential, but he is too young. In addition, this time there is an old author opening a new book on the same theme with him. The editor-in-chief decided that the two books will be published at the same time. Open two hot-blooded sports series at the same time. Takano-ken stood up subconsciously. Team leader, don't open them at the same time. Starting two series at the same time will not make people happy at all. The team leader shook his head. I'll go talk to the deputy editor. Takano went out directly and went to his boss. Takano, what's wrong? Boss, this is a very high-level work. As a newcomer, teacher Kinyu's ability to take a crucial step depends on this. The deputy editor-in-chief shook his head and said helplessly, Takano, this is the decision of the meeting. Boss, if two books of the same genre are published together, the chances of the series becoming a popular work will be reduced by 80%. 80%. I also know that I shouldn't worry about this, but the author is too pitiful if he doesn't fight for him. Let the work be presented in the most interesting state. I do it from this standpoint. The deputy editor sighed and finally said, I'll arrange a big color page for you. That's it? This is a compromise. The other end. Another editor-in-chief was having the same conversation with the old author Riki Matsuda, who had confirmed that the series had been approved. Teacher Matsuda, we are going to publish two passionate sports works this time, and they will be serialized in the same issue. Start in the same period. Yes, two bombs. Matsuda Riki, who is already in his 30s, had an embarrassed expression on his face. It feels like we are competing against each other. Yes, try your best not to lose, the other party is quite interesting too. Yeah. Then there was silence. The editor was expressionless. He had seen this kind of scene many times. He was touched at first, but now it was almost gone. He took the initiative and said, but if you don't get the survey votes for the first episode, the first episode is very important. I'm afraid you need to pay more attention to the content of the work. One word will determine the outcome. Isn't it a comic scroll? If it is a scroll, it means that the editors are more optimistic about their work. Right. Did we lose? Matsuda Riki looked unhappy. The other party's evaluation is relatively high, so we have to do a good job and let him take a good look, the editor said seriously, and Matsuda Riki nodded. He came to this industry, who doesn't want to become famous? Location, Chianyu's house. Jingle bell bell. The phone rang, Asaba Kazuki answered the call, and editor Takano's voice came out. Teacher Asaba, congratulations on the serialization. As I said before, the planning content is very good. What's going on? This guy is so interesting. I want to watch it next week. The depth and affinity of the characters have been demonstrated, and everyone has won recognition. Kinyu Kazuma nodded and said bluntly, are there any changes? You heard it, There is an old author at the same time who is also planning to serialize it at the same time. Don't worry, the editor-in-chief recognizes your potential. We will arrange a large color page for you. Teacher, can you, please be sure to show your potential. Charm and get your ideas across to your readers. Don't worry about me, Jian Yufengjian said calmly, I just draw the good works in my heart, and leave the rest to the readers to evaluate. Takano-ken breathed a sigh of relief, but was worried that Asahi Kazuma would not be satisfied with the result. Now it seems that Teacher Kinyu is fairly easy to communicate with. Of course, the reason why Asahi Kazuma doesn't care is because he has enough confidence in his work. The second reason is because all he needs is the ticket to be serialized in Weekly Shonen Jump. This was his stepping stone to open the door of the animation studio. When the two were about to hang up the phone, Asahi Kazuma vaguely heard the voices of other editors talking to the author on the phone. A serialization meeting was held. Unfortunately, it has been decided to end. The ranking has risen a little recently. I have been begging the higher UPS to wait and see one more chapter, but there is still no way. I originally hoped that this work would become a hit and make you happy. It's probably hard for the teacher's charm to be used on this subject. I'm so sorry. After hanging up the phone, Asahi Kazuma sighed again. The serialization in popular comic magazines is really cruel. But this is good news. He thought of Ishihara Rina and sent her a message, Sister, my manga is going to be serialized in Weekly Shonen Jump. When it is published, can I go and read it with you? Within a few minutes, Ishihara Rina sent a message. Rina Ishihara held her cell phone with a confused look on her face. The authenticity of the dream has obviously been confirmed, but why did the start change? She was fully expecting Asahi Kazuma to come to her home and become his painting teacher so that the two of them could get closer. But something seems wrong now. Ishihara Rina's eyes widened. Did you make a mistake? There will be another update at midnight, and I will recommend it next week. I beg readers to read the latest chapter within 24 hours on Monday and Tuesday. This is related to whether the new book can go further. We've traveled through Tokyo. Who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Hui-siang. Chapter 39. Rina Ishihara thought hard for a while and finally remembered something. The liar once hinted in the comics that the meeting between the two was not a chance encounter, but intentional. Wait, so when the big liar asked her to teach him how to draw, it wasn't because he really didn't understand, but... Ishihara Rina was angry and ashamed. She was only a little angry because the big liar had lied to her again. She was so embarrassed that she couldn't even lift her head, because he had so carefully disguised himself, stayed close to her, and even deliberately let her be his teacher. Does he like this tune very much? Ishihara Rina couldn't help but think wildly. She blushed as she thought about it. Big liar, even if I don't use this method, will I still refuse to let you get close? Her heart trembled slightly, and she mustered up the courage to say, it's so awesome. Unlike me, I have just started trying to become an illustrator on Station P. If you can be serialized in Weekly Shonen Jump, your drawing skills must be very good. If you have time, can you teach me a lesson? Asahi Kazuma. Asahi Kazuma was blinded by the words sent by Ishihara Rina. The teacher becomes the student and the student becomes the teacher. Offense and defense reversed? However, it seems quite interesting. A smile twitched his lips. As a teacher, it is also a rare experience to properly train Ishihara Rina's temperament. So he replied, okay. Then I opened Twitter and followed the news of Animation Studio. Among the on-the-job animation supervisors, someone posted a message on Twitter, which roughly means, Animation Studio can still fight. For the next animation, we have to bet on the future of the company. Jian Yufengjian felt a little emotional. Compared with companies like Shueisha, Toei Animation, and KyoAni, Animation Studio is a completely small company. Small workshops cannot afford the risk. Coupled with the lack of promotion of animation, even if a good work is produced, it is difficult to become a big hit. Sometimes the profit is less, or even the work is bad, and it starts to jump repeatedly on the edge of cash flow cut-off. In the simulation, this company successively took over its own succubus reincarnated and Kimura's dark fairy, making huge profits in an instant. Once it took off, it never fell back. The key to starting work again lies in his reincarnation of the succubus. Now that I have acquired Rina Ishihara's ability, and with the help of myself, the original author, I can not only get out of the predicament, but also go to a higher level than in the simulation. You never know what a good original animator can bring to animation. But this premise is that he can take the lead in this company. Otherwise, how much he earns has nothing to do with him, so why should he bother to do something so thankless? Now that the construction situation is getting more and more serious, this is exactly in line with his expectations. A few days later, Asaba Kazuma returned to his normal routine. There is only one simulation left, and the number of corrections per week is only once. In other words, he has now opened a new simulation and wants to simulate a satisfactory ending in a short time, but there are not enough times for him to use it. He chose to save up. Moreover, although the digestive potion can speed up the development progress of awakening gene, it cannot be achieved overnight. It still takes a certain amount of time to consolidate and train. On this day, Asaba Kazome received a call from Denjiki Bunko's Tamura Senpai, saying that the review of reincarnation succubus related content has been completed, and hoped that he could spare time to go to Denjiki Bunko's editorial department to sign the contract. Asaba Kazuma didn't think too much and decided on a time to go. After class, he went to Hayakawa Harana to get a new study progress schedule. He did not continue the tutoring but left school normally. Soon after he got on the tram, he took out the book from his bag, sat on his seat and read it. Ignoring the faint whispers of the girls around him, after turning more than 30 pages, he heard the sound of a vehicle arriving at the station. Holding the bag in one hand and the books in the other, he squeezed out of the car, then opened the bag and prepared to put the books in it. At this time, a young girl passed by him and got into the car with a subtle fragrance. Asayu Kazuma subconsciously turned his head to look at the girl, and saw an indifferent but familiar face. Chien Uman? Chien Kazuma was stunned for a moment. Why did she come here? Without thinking much, he closed his backpack and went directly to the floor where the Denjiki Bunko editorial department was located. When he was about to enter the company, Asaba Kazuma called Tamura Yuzuki in advance. Not long after, editor Tamura appeared at the door and led him inside. Teacher Asaba is younger than we thought, Yuzuki, Tamura said seriously, with a hint of praise and a bit of sincerity. After all, I'm still a high school student, Kinha Kazuma said with a smile. Tamura Yuzuki was secretly surprised, the smile on his face became brighter, and he said, "It is quite rare to have such sophisticated writing skills at such an age." Qian Yufengjian said calmly, "Compared to someone I know, he is still far behind." The two came to the sofa chair in the living room and chatted for a while. The main thing is to communicate and agree on the future framework of Asaba Kazuma's upcoming new book, as well as some plot developments, which can be considered a routine matter. Qian Yufengjian was not afraid at all. He has absorbed the entire content of Reincarnation of the Succubus as well as the excellent illustrations, and the conversation is naturally clear and coherent, which makes Yuzuki Tamura even more satisfied. With all due respect, Mr. Asaba, is this really your first time submitting a light novel? Of course, Kinya Kazuma replied affirmatively. I added another sentence in my mind, limited to reality. Tamura Yuzuki nodded and pushed the contract to Asaba Kazuma, please sign here. I have already communicated with the editor about the illustration contract. In principle, the editor has no objection. Asaba Kazuma nodded, picked up the pen and signed the contract. When he was about to chat with Tamura Senpai, who had helped him a lot in the simulator, he suddenly heard some noisy conversation coming from the chief editor's office. I saw the editor-in-chief of Dengeki Bunko followed by a bald young and middle-aged man wearing a Uniqlo shirt. The editor-in-chief of Dengeki Bunko said something very seriously. Asaba Kazuma could vaguely hear bits and pieces of words such as "Our animation studio is sincere, the adapted content is absolutely trustworthy, betting on the future." As if aware of Asaba Kazuma's curiosity, Tamura Yuzuki on the side explained. Daisuke Hiramaki, the supervisor of the animation studio, came here as a routine to lobby the editor-in-chief. "I hope we can relax a little and release a better popular novel to help the animation studio turn the tide, but in any case the editor doesn't agree." "Huh? Why?" "The construction cost is small and we cannot afford the risks. Now that there is a cash flow problem, the editor-in-chief is naturally unwilling to give out popular projects, not to mention that many peers are now poaching their core members." Qian Yufengjian was thoughtful. "Comparing lightly modified comics to comic adaptations, they are actually less valued." He knew that it would be difficult to start the project, but he did not expect that the project would not even be able to get a better light adaptation manga project from Dengeki Bunko. Asaba Kazuma could probably guess what the editor-in-chief of Bunko was thinking. "If you do more, you will make more mistakes; if you do less, you will make more mistakes; if you do less, you will make more mistakes." The editor-in-chief may or may not really not believe in the production level of the project. The reason for his disagreement is that he is worried that if the project is completed halfway, it will go bankrupt. He squinted his eyes and smiled like a little fox, cunning and beautiful. Just as the animation studio supervisor was about to pass by, Asaba Kazuma suddenly asked, "Mr. Tamura, regarding the content of the original paintings of my novel, I have actually brought them today, and I would like you to take a look." Asaba Kazuma took out a document bag from his backpack, opened it, and handed a stack of clean drawing papers to Tamura Yuzuki. At this moment, Daisuke Hiramaki chased the editor-in-chief and walked past the two of them. With a startling glance, he was instantly attracted by the original painting Asaba Kazuma placed on the table. Without him, it's so emotional. Just putting it on the table seems to be talking to the people around you all the time, look at me again. The powerful expressive power of the picture frightened Daisuke Hiramaki and even caught his eyes. Kinya Kazuma stretched his body, chuckled and said, "Painting is really hard work." Editor Tamura looked at the drawing paper blankly and nodded subconsciously. After a moment, he came back to his senses and said, "Teacher Asaba has drawn so many illustrations these days. It's really a thank you to you. It's not too hard. After all, it's my own novel. Besides, compared to the workload on your side, Weekly Shonen Jump side is much more difficult to handle." Jump, Tamura Yuzuki suspected that he heard wrongly. "Ah! Didn't I tell you? Starting next week, my comics will be serialized on the internet." Asaba Kazuma stretched and yawned slowly. "Jump's request is really troublesome. It took me an entire night to finish the manuscript." This time, not only editor Tamura and Daisuke Hiramaki were stunned, but the editor-in-chief on the side also stopped and looked at Asaba Kazuma. "We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love?" Author, Fei Se Hui-Xiang. Chapter 40. Chapter 40. He made a decision that went against the teachings of his ancestors. JPG. Jump, the editor-in-chief stopped. His eyes glanced at his right-hand man, Yuzuki Tamura. Editor Tamura stood up and bowed and said, "Chief Editor, this is Mr. Asaba, the person I communicated with you about the illustrator contract before." The editor-in-chief's eyes lit up. He first looked at Daisuke Hiramaki and said, "Supervisor Hiramaki, this is a light novel author we are going to recommend highly in the near future, Mr. Asaba. Mr. Asaba's new work still has some gimmicks, and his writing style is also excellent. Even the teacher's illustrations are done by himself. He is a very powerful person. Qian Yufengjian was a little surprised. He originally thought that the editor-in-chief would be as grumpy as in the simulation, but now it seems that when you have a bright future, you will find that all the noise around you disappears, leaving only goodwill. Asaba Kazuma showed a polite smile, shook hands with the editor-in-chief first, and then with Daisuke Hiramaki, and said calmly. Asaba Kazuma, a major student, part-time light novel author and manga artist. Daisuke Hiramaki stared at the illustrations on the table and suddenly said, Mr. Asaba, you just said that your novel will be serialized on Jump. Kinyo Kazuma nodded, that's what happened. I just handed in the manuscript yesterday. Daisuke Hiramaki was in awe. I wonder who your editor is. It's Mr. Takano-ken, I wonder if you've heard of it. Daisuke Hiramaki nodded, finally confirming that what he said was true. Editor Takano-ken knows that he has completed the manga adaptation of the popular work Killer Destroyer, Blade, and now is the period when sales are exploding. It's really amazing. When he said this, the light from the top of the office illuminated Daisuke Hiramaki's forehead. The editor-in-chief next to him said slowly, Supervisor Hiramaki, it's not that I don't want to help you. In fact, as you know, Dengeki Bunko is not my own. Now that your company is in such a situation, even if I want to help you, the plan, if you submit it to the head office, it will probably be rejected. It would be better for you to take a look at some potential works. I personally think that given the current situation of your company, instead of thinking about popular masterpieces, it is better to find some light novels with enough gimmicks for comic adaptation. If you are willing, we will fully support it. Seeing what the editor-in-chief said so clearly, Daisuke Hiramaki could only sigh, nodded, and said, There's really no way to negotiate. Director Hiramaki, you should also consider our situation. Kadokawa is still watching over there. Daisuke Hiramaki was silent for a long time and nodded, I'm very sorry for disturbing you. The editor-in-chief sighed, if your company can survive this period of time, we will be sincere enough for subsequent cooperation. The implication is, not now. Daisuke Hiramaki opened his mouth, but said nothing in the end. The animation industry is as cruel as ever, Asaba Kazuma said softly from the side. Jump stops serializing quite a few works every year, and many of them cannot even be transferred to other journals under Shueisha. Generally speaking, Jump specifically refers to Weekly Shonen Jump, but in fact there are many other weekly magazines under Shueisha. Some of them have not achieved satisfactory results, but they are not bad works. After they stop serializing on Jump, they will put it directly into other weekly magazines and update it. But most of the time, it's like the author of the online article who cuts the book, the bottom part is gone. Daisuke Hiramaki sighed and said nothing more. He quietly turned his head and looked at the illustrations Asaba Kazuma placed on the table. The more I looked, the more frightened I became. At this time, after collecting the contract, editor Tamura began to verify the typescript and illustrations of Asaba Kazuma's novel word for word. Asaba Kazuma opened the teaching aid materials and looked at them quietly. Kazuma's principle 2, manage your time well and make full use of fragmented time to become a better Tokyo boy. After a long time, Kinyo Kazuma closed the book slightly, left half of his body empty and said, Director Hiramaki, it's very tiring to stand all the time. If you want to watch, just sit down. Daisuke Hiramaki said and then he realized that it seemed rude to him to stand nearby and watch. After all, the light novel author's manuscript and illustrations haven't been released to the market yet, and they can be regarded as Dengeki Bunko's trade secrets. It doesn't look good for him to look like this. But, he couldn't move his feet. Some people who don't know much about the animation supervision industry may not understand the responsibilities of animation supervision. But if you change the term, many people will understand its accusation. Animation director. An excellent original animator may not necessarily be an excellent supervisor. An excellent supervisor must be a sufficiently qualified or even excellent original animator. Daisuke Hiramaki's aesthetics for illustrations is online. It is precisely because he is online that he cannot leave. So beautiful. In some paintings, the content of the composition is obviously not complicated, but it always gives people an eye-catching feeling. Logically speaking, Daisuke Hiramaki should leave voluntarily now. But mentally, he wanted to see it a few more times. So he chose to sit down in a very honest manner and gently flip through the illustrations that had been reviewed. Next to him, Asaba Kazuma was reading a book seriously. He is really learning. Although he has the strength to lure Daisuke Hiramaki to take the bait, it does not mean that he will put down the work in hand. In other words, he has absolute confidence that Daisuke Hiramaki will take the initiative to ask him. After Yuzuki Tamura reviewed all the content, he raised his head and said from the bottom of his heart, "Teacher Kinyu, you are really amazing." Asaba Kazuma closed the book and said, "I think too much. It's just that few people take this shortcut. Being able to find shortcuts is a skill in itself. Besides, being able to pass jumps review is inherently very capable." Editor Tamura said with a smile, "Being able to do this in high school is really outstanding." When Daisuke Hiramaki saw the two of them starting to chat, he suddenly asked, "What is Mr. Asaba's new work? Can I take a look at it? If the writing is really good and the number of serialized volumes is large, it may not be impossible to settle for the second best." But Asahi Kazuma shook his head. "The first volume will be published next week." Daisuke Hiramaki was heartbroken. This had not been published yet and there were no practical results. How could he convince the company? He then remembered what Asaba Kazuma said, that his comics would not be on Jump until next week. This is good, there are no results to prove it in the comics. But only he who has seen Asaba Kazuma's works with his own eyes knows what an excellent original artist he is. It's a pity that not many people will believe it without proven ability. Chienyu Kazuma looked at Daisuke Hiramaki's lost state and snickered in his heart, but felt that it was natural. After all, when he saw Rina Ishihara's paintings for the first time during the simulation, he also lost his temper like this. Now it's my turn to see others like this, and I feel even more refreshed. As expected of my girl. Huh. Suddenly he had the urge to fall in love in reality, but fortunately he had strong willpower and suppressed it. Editor Tamura packed up his things and prepared to leave. Daisuke Hiramaki knew it was time for him to leave, so he stood up and left. Kinyu Kazuma did not leave him alone. He is not in a hurry to cooperate with Animation Studio now. He has to let people see his strength in order to achieve better cooperation. He took a slow sip of tea. Tamura Yuzuki planned to take him to an izakaya to eat something good without drinking alcohol after getting off work. But what he didn't know was that outside Denjiki Bunko Company, Daisuke Hiramaki was on the phone. "Hey, are you editor Takano-ken?" "Ah, I'm Daisuke Hiramaki from Animation Studio. I just want to ask you something. Do you know Mr. Asaba?" "Ah, yes, I met him at Denjiki Bunko." "What, you don't know that Denjiki Bunko plans to vigorously promote Mr. Asaba recently?" "What? The editor-in-chief and deputy editor-in-chief are very optimistic about Teacher Kinyu's new work. Did you also give me the front page and color pages?" "Ah, understand clearly, these things will not be revealed." When Daisuke Hiramaki was watching downstairs of Denjiki Bunko Company, he saw Asaba Kazuma walking with his editor and saying, "I haven't had time to write the manuscript recently, Mr. Tamura. The contents of the next 3 volumes are all here, and the subsequent review will be left to you." The hesitation in Daisuke Hiramaki's heart was shaken like never before. It's better to find some light novels with enough gimmicks to adapt them into comics. The words came to his mind. He took a deep breath and strengthened his judgment again. He quietly followed the two of them. He made a decision that went against the teachings of his ancestors. JPG. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Hui. Chapter 41. When Asaba Kazuma had finished his meal and sent editor Tamura to the car at the entrance of the izakaya, he suddenly felt a red light flashing in front of him. When he came back to his senses, he saw that the light from the door of the izakaya was shining on Daisuke Hiramaki's bare forehead, and the light was reflected. He was stunned for a moment, looking at the supervisor who had been standing outside for who knows how long with a confused look on his face. He hesitated and said, "Does Supervisor Pingmu have something to do with me?" Just as Daisuke Hiramaki was about to speak, his stomach let out an unsatisfactory groan. The two looked at each other. 10 minutes later, Daisuke Hiramaki finished the udon noodles in front of him like a storm, put down his chopsticks and said, "I'm full," and then turned his attention to Asaba Kazuma. "Teacher Chienyu is a sophomore this year." "Well, what's wrong?" "No, I just feel that life is scary." Daisuke Hiramaki straightened his posture and said seriously, "Teacher Asaba, have you ever thought that your work will be put on the big screen and become a scene of a popular animation?" Chienyu Kazuma chuckled lightly and said, "What, the animation studio is interested?" Daisuke Hiramaki nodded and said, "The animation studio's production capabilities are obvious to all in the industry. I have learned about Mr. Asaba's works and they are in line with our expectations for light adaptation comics. So I came here this time hoping to work together and use animation to show the charm of Mr. Asaba's novels." "Bullshit." Asahi Kazuma directly came to this conclusion. There should be many companies waiting and watching now. The animation studio is now in a precarious situation, and the company still has such a large group of people to support. However, the previous animation production was not profitable, which has shaken the capital chain of the construction. If you are not careful, make another mistake, and it is possible to disband on the spot. Those who started the construction now urgently need a good work to put out the fire. But good works, popular comics are basically in the pockets of those big companies. For medium-level and excellent works, the licensing fee is also a huge burden for the startup. That's why Daisuke Hiramaki and the others turned their attention to light novels. Asaba Kazuma suspected that in the simulation, it was not that Gogo chose his own work, but that Gogo had no choice at all. If you can't take the grand road to fight your way out, then choose to take the extreme path. Survival is the success. The protagonist of The Reincarnation of a Succubus is a male succubus. The novel itself is on an evil path, and a company is set up that also wants to be on the evil path. It's really like a pair of dragons and phoenixes, but a subtle chemical reaction occurred. However, Asaba Kazuma wanted Hameki Daisuke to say sorry. "I refuse," he said calmly. "I am responsible for my works and my readers." Daisuke Hiramaki didn't expect him to refuse so simply, but he still persisted and said, "Teacher Kinyu, we started construction with sincerity. The current employment environment is not good, and it is not easy to have a company where you can feel comfortable working. People in the company are also willing to do their best. This is a once-in-a-lifetime moment. We are betting on the future. The products we make will never be bad." He can praise the company's poor operating conditions to the heavens. Supervisor Pingmu is actually suitable for sales. Kinyu Kazuma's words made him blush. In Japan, the industry chain for both lightly adapted manga and anime is quite sophisticated. A skilled industrial chain gives terminal creators more say. Although there are special cases like White Bear Cafe where animations are broadcast and only known to the author, this cannot be said to be a common situation. On the extreme side, like high school, the reason why it has not been animated is because Mr. Takahashi believed that animation would ruin his manga. Director Hiramaki, I'm not that easy to convince. I still have some confidence in my work. When the work becomes popular, I can change it into a manga, and I will get more original royalties. No one will complain about earning less. Daisuke Hiramaki's mouth opened slightly. What about the high school students you promised? How come teacher Kinyu even knows the inside story of original work royalty fee so clearly? Isn't it said that college students nowadays always have a clear sense of stupidity that says, "You're so weird"? Asayu Kazuma laughed inwardly. He really didn't know the inside story of this business, but editor Tamura did. Do you really think that he was just chatting with his editor in the izakaya just for a meal? Of course, he didn't really want to refuse. Teacher Asaba, if you can agree, we will definitely treat your work well. When the work comes out and the company's situation recovers, we will also give you a big gift alone, Daisuke Hiramaki said again. Asahi Kazuma still shook his head, took a sip of buckwheat tea, and sighed. This is my first novel, and I am half a child, I have to pay more. Daisuke Hiramaki knew that it was impossible to add more money. If he added more money, it would not even be enough to start the animation, let alone turn it over. He thought for a moment, then called the president and explained the situation. After a while, he put down the phone, took a breath and said, Teacher Qianyu, we can't give you a high original work royalty, but the president agrees to draw up a contract, and the operating royalty that meets your expectations will be treated as project investment, and the excess will be incorporated into the animation, and dividends will be shared. Do you think this is okay? Qianyu Fengjian raised his eyebrows. If you win, everyone will make money together. If you lose everything, everyone will die together? Not enough. Asahi Kazuma still refused. I know the content of my novel. Without enough investment, the possibility of you making a satisfactory work is zero. Daisuke Hiramaki looked grave. Teacher Asahi, we will show you the true nature of a workman who goes all out. Why did it start to ignite just as I was talking? Kinyu Kazuma looked confused. Oh, a native of Japan, that's no problem. I refuse. Asaba Kazuma agreed with the sincerity of starting construction, but still refused. He looked at Daisuke Hiramaki calmly and said, if you expect me to personally participate in it and help with the original painting, don't think too much. I am very busy, and you can't afford me the price to start the construction. The protagonist of Reincarnated Succubus is a male succubus. I want to use a paintbrush to show his charm. This is not something ordinary original painters can do. I don't have that much time, or in other words, you can't afford it when starting the project. Cunning master, you still want to keep something secret? No matter how much the dividends from the royalties of the original work are, how much more can we get? Asaba Kazuma was certain that Daisuke Hiramaki didn't even look at his own work. The purpose of the supervisor has always been clear, to recruit himself into the team and support the original animator. If you want him to join, you have to pay enough money. Director Hiramaki, come up with your final terms and come to me alone. If you can't deal with my side, after tonight, Denjiki Bunko and Jump will know about it. It's useless for you to try to defeat them one by one. Daisuke Hiramaki shook his head bitterly. I really can't hide anything from you, teacher Kinyu. We have reached the point where we have no dignity at all. We have completely failed. Asaba Kazuma smiled and said, we don't have much money left to start the construction. You can't afford my expenses. You probably want to invite me to be the script and painting supervisor. The related expenses for this part will be converted into this investment. You don't have to can. Daisuke Hiramaki was dumbfounded. It's crazy. He originally just wanted to pay Asaba Kazuma to direct the original painting, and forget about the script. Why was he even given the painting supervision? But, he doesn't ask for money directly. Daisuke Hiramaki gritted his teeth and whispered. The president wants to make a big bet. he will directly buy the animation adaptation rights and become the first member of the production committee. If he wins, we will directly come back to life and supervise the animation. I want to ask about this. In short, become the first investor in this anime. You are really crazy, you will run out of ammunition and food this way. Kinyo Kazuma shook his head and sighed, but a cheeky smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. In this case, tell your president, don't give me the original work. The royalties are all converted into investments and included in the production. Since you want to bet, I will bet with you. Daisuke Hiramaki's expression was solemn. I need to communicate with the president. After a moment, he put down the phone. The president agreed. Okay, Supervisor Ping Mu, we will be colleagues from now on. The most troublesome one is done, and the rest is just some tricks from Denjiki Bunko and Jump. After the two said goodbye, Supervisor Hiramaki immediately called the president. Well, yes, that's it. President, Mr. Kyanba has agreed. The next step is Denjiki Bunko and Jump. I'm afraid I need your support. Does the original artist think it is too hasty to directly decide on the painting director? Stupid, wait until Mr. Kinya goes to the company, then let them open their eyes. We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Hui. Chapter 42. In the room, Asahi Kazuma stretched. I opened Twitter, found Rina, and replied directly, Animation Studio has contacted me. As expected, I will work overtime to make sure it airs in October this year. By then, my sister will come to my house to watch it with me. Okay. Then it started to get busy. His academic load has been a bit heavy recently, and he has become more strict with his time. Although I don't know how much digital intelligence I have, my IQ will not be too bad if I can enter Heikuin High School. Fortunately, after adding 1 point to his intelligence, his memory and information processing ability were significantly improved. By the time Rina returned the message, he had already organized his homework into pieces. If this were the case at the beginning, Asahi Kazuma might not pay much attention to learning. Making money is the last word. But after starting the love simulation, he became more interested in studying. Let's talk about a very fatal problem. Adjusting genes. It creates geniuses and brings huge disasters to adjusters. If possible, he hoped to study the mystery of this thing himself. The Faculty of Medicine of the University of Tokyo is world-renowned, but it consistently ranks first in Tokyo University's admission scores. He estimated that based on his current study progress, it would not be difficult for him to choose a good major if he entered Kyoto University, but the Tokyo University School of Medicine. Hard to say. Just when Rina sent a message, he stretched out, picked up his phone and took a look. Asterisk congratulations. I will have to work harder. Effort. What to strive for? Qian Yufengjian was a little confused. In this world, Rina is probably still in a state of deafness. Could it be that her thoughts have changed because she recognized herself as a teacher? He replied, did sister find any new interests? I'm going to Station P to pick up the illustration order. Sister Rina is no longer fishing? Qian Yufengjian was a little surprised. What's your nickname? I'll go up and have a look. Can you not watch it? My sister is hiding something from me now, even though I tell her everything. The Asashi family's drawing board. In the dim room, Rina Ishihara put down the tablet in her hand and patted her hot face. Does he think too much? Kinchi, isn't it just Kinyu and Ishihara? If he asks me what I mean, how should I answer? Do you think I am an indecent girl? Not long after, the phone lit up. She picked up her phone in panic. I didn't expect my sister to combine our last names. I really didn't know that I was so important to my sister. In this case, I will also give some of my works to my sister to upload. Kinchi, you can't just have sister without me. I don't mind integrating with sister. After a long time, she slowly replied. Good. Ishiharina buried her head in her knees. Although the room was empty, she was too embarrassed to let anyone see her red cheeks. When Asahi Kazuma saw Supervisor Hiramaki again, it was already 2 days later. Daisuke Hiramaki called over, and proudly talked about how he had used Mr. Asaba to agree to the adaptation, and persuaded the editor-in-chief of Dengeki Bunko to sell the animation adaptation rights and give up the top spot on the production committee. Then how to contact Jump, and with the agreement between Asaba Kazuma and Dengeki Bunko, it was decided first and then announced, hoping that Shueisha could cooperate with the promotion. 17 years old, alone in Tokyo, a Jump serial manga artist, a light novel author recently promoted by Dengeki Bunko, and started working on the script and animation supervision of a new project. This label is similar to Stacking Buff. In terms of gimmicks, Supervisor Pingmu has figured it out. He not only wants to play gimmicks with animated content, but he doesn't even mind that he, other producers and even the company also become gimmicks. The ultimate achievement of a lazy person is to turn oneself into a lazy. Kinya Kazuma was willing to cooperate with his craziness. A certain female writer is right, you need to be famous early. Although she is more famous for the other sentence behind her. Teacher, can you see if you have time to come to the company today? We will definitely have a place in the new show in October this year. It's time for you to come and meet the partners who work together. Daisuke Hiramaki's voice was loud, and it seemed that everything was going according to plan, which made him feel very excited. Okay, send me the address of the construction headquarters. I will go directly after class. After making the call, Asahi Kazuma walked directly towards the teacher's office. When he entered, a slender JK girl walked past him. When the two people's eyes met, he saw a pair of quiet and distant faces. Senior Shiina, do you have anything to do with the teachers? Asahi Kazuma greeted politely. It's been dealt with. Shiina Yuine, who had met once on the train, nodded, and then left directly. Asaba Kazuma came to Hayakawa Harina's workstation. However, Hayakawa Harina seemed to have something urgent to go out and only left a study list on the table, as if she knew he would come to pick it up. Asaba Kazuma picked up the list and left the office. Counting the time, there will be a mock test next week. I don't know how much better his score will be after this period of hard work. Location, Animation Studio Company. Time, after class. When Kinha Kazuma suddenly saw the reflection, he knew that Daisuke Hiramaki was coming. Director Hiramaki took him to introduce in detail the specific members of the reincarnation of the Succubus production team. 2 directors, 3 screenwriters, producers, and original animators are the core backbone of the project. The budget is unexpectedly high. One episode is currently planned to be 19 million yen. Considering that there are not many battle scenes in the early stage of reincarnation of Succubus, this investment is quite good. At present, the animation is tentatively scheduled to have 13 episodes, and it will be a quarterly series. From the beginning of the project to the broadcast, if we really work hard to rush the work, it will take almost 3 months of preparation time. As for the original painter, my requirements may be a bit high, so everyone should be mentally prepared when the time comes, Kinya Kazuma said calmly. The original artist team members below looked at each other. They haven't had time to question the strength of the airborne supervisor Kinyu, and now they are starting to make a fuss about the new official's appointment. Daisuke Hiramaki saw that the atmosphere at the original painter's side was a bit delicate, so he took the initiative to stand up and said, Teacher Asaba's ability is recognized by me. Now is the most critical moment to start construction. I hope everyone can work together. It doesn't matter. Asayu Kazuma gave him a meaningful look. If you have any opinions, it's better to express them in advance. It's better than conflicts to break out when the work is actually being promoted. Qian Yufengjian paused for a moment and said somewhat subtly. Director Ping Mu, did you do anything you shouldn't have done when I wasn't here? Ahem, isn't this to boost their confidence and say a few more words about your illustrations? Daisuke Hiramaki scratched his bald head. Seeing that this painting supervisor is not a person who cannot communicate, the bold original artist below also became curious. Director Hiramaki said that Director Asaba's painting ability is ridiculously strong. We are all curious. Maybe there's a little bit of dissatisfaction? Asaba Kazuma chuckled lightly, looked at Daisuke Hiramaki and said, in the first part of the reincarnation of Succubus, over there in the storyboard of the waltz in the sky scene that the male protagonist showed during his first battle, didn't you ask me what I thought before? Asaba Kazuma smiled, opened his school bag, took out a USB flash drive from inside and said, actually, I have almost finished processing most of the storyboards for the first famous scene of the reincarnation of a succubus. Daisuke Hiramaki? Art supervision and photography supervision? Original animators? Wait a minute, if they remember correctly, the project has just been established now. In such a short period of time, 4 or 5 original animators worked together to assist, and they all had to work overtime for a day or two. What did they hear now? Damn, it's the Liver Emperor.